Hey everybody, C-Note here. Long time no listen to Johnny. It's been a little while. Lots going on around here, and I kind of put my focus on guest posts and working with people. So I haven't really taken the time to just have me talk on here. I've been going through a lot of growth, a lot of changes, and I wanted to share that with you. So yep, C-Note here, aka Christian Rivera, and consider this the first episode of DOPEamine. I'm gonna just kind of like continue it as if it's, transitioning from my last podcast into this one. It's essentially the same show, just a different label. I'm gonna keep Anchor with my name, and then DOPEamine is going to be the official name of the podcast so that people externally can find it through that name. And then I'm going to work on the branding. I've got some ideas and stuff for that. So I've got a lot of projects going on right now. And I'm pretty excited about it. There's been a lot of personal growth going on for me. I've done a lot of discovery as it pertains to like the Myers-Briggs personality types. That's really been helping me dive further into my mental health and realize who I am. And in a lot of ways, I've been denying myself access to being myself more than I really think I have been. And that has likely led to a lot of mental struggle. I think now, as I'm starting to lean more into who I am, which is INTP, by the way, if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs, and that's what I want to talk about on this episode, by the way, is the Myers-Briggs and what I've learned about it and what I've learned about myself. But I also want to use these intros as a means to let you guys know how I'm doing, even if, even if it's a guest, I have a guest on or anything like that. And then I also want to take Mondays and maybe Fridays also to do updates and talk about topics and just have it be me again like it was in the past. So I'm going to do 2 podcasts a week of just me, at least Monday, maybe Friday also. And then if Molly's with me, maybe she'll join me on some topics. She's currently working right now. And just the intro will be a little bit update about what I'm doing. And this episode is going to be kind of a big update of me and what I've been going through. I feel really good lately. I feel a lot clearer and better. I think I have a better understanding of my brain chemistry, a better understanding of how I approach life and how I feel like I should naturally be approaching life. And just feel like I need to own my strengths a little bit more and stop trying to pretend to be something I'm not. And once I dive into INTP, you'll learn a little bit more about that. So, projects I got going on right now, Swing for the Fences. I've still got that first album that I finished, I finished all the instrumentals, or nearly finished all the instrumentals at the end of last year, and haven't done all of the vocals just yet. So that still needs to be done, and I'm continuing to make music and make songs, and I'm likely going to collaborate with my friend Nathan to work on another album in the future. And I want to put out some instrumentals and stuff like that, so that I can just kind of have a stream of just instrumentals under my name, not Swing for the Fences. And that way people can listen to my music. They can use it for, royalty-free stuff. Not royalty-free because there's going to be license fees, but, I'll get paid for the usage of those songs and stuff like that. So just having, quote-unquote passive income out there, every once in a while a couple bucks comes in and it feels really good. Rival Design Studio, that's still going strong. I've got a logo I'm working on for a client, and I'm really holding my own a little bit more in terms of my pricing. I'm not just taking cheap clients. I want to work on some fonts. I want to turn my handwriting into a couple fonts, and then do some further my social management, which is really what's paying the bills right now. And that's going really well as also. So, I'll just kick off the show. I think the first segment I'll talk about DOPEamine a little bit, what I have planned for that, and some of the books I plan on writing for that as well. And, some of the other ideas behind Myers-Briggs. So, and that'll be the focus of the show, for the rest of the show. So, I'm excited to be back doing a little bit more on Anchor, and, stay tuned. Let's go.
Drum please.
Why, north, west, south, west, south side, right, why, yeah, now here it is.
Alright everybody, officially welcome to the show. Welcome to DOPEamine, the show that is like Richard Simmons, not confusing. So, I wanted to talk to you guys about DOPEamine, what this project is, what it's going to entail, what I'm going to be sharing with you guys. Now, for the most part, the core tenets of the show are not going to change. It's going to be a show about mental health and mindset as it pertains to productivity and business and creativity. And mostly creativity. I'm going to try to pull back from the business side a little bit, because I'm a little bit personally, this is kind of like my fight against the rah-rah hustle mindset. Not that that's a bad thing. I just think there's more to life than that. I think there is more to life than just business, than just making money. And ultimately, if you could find ways to be happier, to kind of get level and learn a little bit more about your mental health, and to share people's stories about their triumph or current struggles with mental health, I think we can unify people a little bit better and get people into a better mindset day to day, as opposed to trying to push people beyond their natural state and pushing them into mania or to burnout. You know, as much as, you know, for me with cyclothymia that I have, it is a situation where if I push myself too hard, if I watch too many Gary Vee videos, for example, I can push myself into mania, make too many plans, and burn myself out. And when I go into mania, it's scary. You know, it's a situation where I'm more susceptible to substance abuse, irritability, generally making bad decisions. So, and I don't think that's very different from the average person. I think my case is a little bit more extreme. Anyone with bipolar is a little bit more extreme. But most people, I feel, have some semblance of that. They get burnt out because they push themselves too hard, for example. Or they get sad or discouraged if they, you know, are not accomplishing enough or not feeling like they're accomplishing enough. So this show is kind of a way to make things a little bit more human. I want to share informational stuff. I want to share people's stories, but I want it to be interesting. I want it to be interesting for me and for you, because I respond to people a little bit differently. I like to ask questions. I like to learn about how people tick. I'm not so concerned with feelings per se. It's weird. But as I dive into INTP stuff and explain my Myers-Briggs personality a little bit more, a little bit later in this podcast, you'll understand that a little bit better. So my plan for DOPEamine is I want to do this podcast regularly. I want to have me talking. I want to have guests on and continue to have guests on, people who are sharing their stories, sharing their struggle, or sharing their triumphs, sharing what they're doing in business and how they're helping people. You know, I have some examples. This Wednesday, I have Tom and Amanda, who are going to be talking about their business, working as a couple. And there's some mindset things that we talk about in there. And it's very useful for anyone who's working with, in a relationship, working with someone that they're being with. And, you know, there's some shows in the future, another creative, there's a couple other designers that I'm talking to at some point. So there's still going to be some of the design element, talk about creativity and stuff like that. And then I have someone on who is Kate St. Hilaire. She's going to talk about introversion, and she helps introverts kind of get themselves out there and learn how to be entrepreneurs, despite their desire to remain internal thinkers. And there's a lot to break down there, and a lot to break down there for me as well. So I'm going to talk probably a lot about Myers-Briggs stuff. I'm going to talk about creativity. I'm going to do some videos on YouTube at some point, working on some branding updates, which are going to be pretty dope, pun definitely intended. And I'm probably going to change the theme song as well. I'm not really sure. The theme song's really good, so I might keep the theme song for me and my personal stuff, and then change DOPEamine's theme song for itself. So next, I want to talk about some of the books I have planned. I definitely bit my lip during that last segment because I was like finishing last bits of food that I was eating from this morning, and that doesn't feel very good. Anyway, so along with DOPEamine and some of my other projects I'm working on, Swing for the Fences, Rival Design Studio, and DOPEamine, I've got some book ideas that I wanted to write. I've been doing a lot of heavy research into INTP, which is my personality type, Myers-Briggs personality type. And, oh, excuse me, that was gross. I apologize. And through a lot of that reading, I'm realizing that a lot of ebooks don't really need to be a set length. I've been reading a lot of really short books, 50 pages or so, and it's really making me feel like, oh, I could do that. I have a book that I've been writing for a long time that actually I wrote a draft for maybe like 2 or 3 years ago called Shuffle Up and Deal. It's a poker book based on it's like a poker player's guide to life in a way. From a professional standpoint, from mental health and taking care of yourself, self-care, and learning how to navigate the world and realizing you have a lot more control than you think you do. And it really requires just some patience and observing. Patience, observing, deploying, tactics, and, kind of being on alert all the time in some ways, but knowing when to take breaks and knowing when to take care of yourself. So I'm still working on that. I have a draft done, and I think this, me kind of going into this this search for things, for understanding, has allowed me the motivation to want to finish it. So that's pretty high on my list of things to finish. I also have a couple books that I've had ideas for that I feel are more attainable now. Because, for example, Shuffle Up and Deal, I had about 50, 60 pages done, and I had it in my head that a book should be like 200, 300 pages. And I felt like I already accomplished what I wanted to write, and adding more would just be filling. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that in life, and I don't want to do that in a book. I don't want to just pad things for the sake of padding it. I appreciate efficiency, I appreciate directness, and I think that's why those INTP books are so short, because INTPs appreciate that sort of efficiency. So some other ideas I had were a book called Awake, which is more of a story-based book. It's a nonfiction because it would be kind of about my life, but with some fantastical presentation elements. Not fantastical in the setting or anything like that, but just in, more poetic, more feelings and emotions based, mixed in with actual stories of my life. Maybe not framed as it, being with my name on it or anything like that, but, kind of retellings of some of the difficulties I've faced based on my mental health struggles. And simply being awake is a hard thing sometimes. So it's a struggle. So another book was I have a tentative title called Who Gives a Fuck? And I find that a lot of people struggle with caring too much about what other people think, and really finding that balance of respecting people's opinions, but also realizing that you don't need to deploy them. You don't need to do what your mom says. You don't need to do what your spouse says or wants you to do. But there's a certain degree of respect that you need to deploy in those things, but also understanding that you are your own person. You're the person in your life that you're going to spend the most time with. And you need to give yourself the most respect out of all of those things and not push yourself into mania. Mental health struggles often stem from repression of feelings and thoughts and not sharing them properly. So that's kind of what I want to touch on in that book. So now I'm going to dive into the Myers-Briggs stuff.
If you've been dying to start that podcast about doves, or about your favorite jacket, or about a long-lost love, or a murder mystery about a cat who murdered everybody, you can start it now on Spotify for podcasters. I've been on Anchor for a long time, and now it is officially Spotify for podcasters, and it has been a platform that has been growing for forever. And I love it, and I still use it to this day, and it has hosted this podcast for 500 plus episodes now. So I highly recommend it. It is free to use. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. I'm literally on my bed recording on my, the phone is on the bed, and I'm just talking, and it's not that complicated. And then you can distribute your podcast on Spotify and everywhere else that podcasts are heard. So video podcasts are available too if you want to show your pretty face and have people see you. And you can do all that too. So just do it. It's totally free. No catch. Give it a try. Spotify for podcasters. Let's go.
So the Myers-Briggs has been fascinating me for years, but not until recently have I felt the urge to really, really dive into it. And the most interesting aspect is that for the most part, if you've taken the Myers-Briggs test, I think a lot of people get the impression that the Myers-Briggs test is similar to a horoscope or like a tarot reading. That it's just about feelings and top-level baseline, catch-all phrases and things that can apply to every personality type. Truth is, there are plenty of overlaps between personality types, but there are also a lot of specifics that really help to serve as a baseline for understanding a little bit more about who you are and how you make decisions. And that's really what the Myers-Briggs personality assessment is about. It's more about how your brain functions, how it makes decisions, and how it goes about the world. Not just responding emotionally, but how you look at anything that involves further depth and understanding. So if you are an extrovert versus an introvert, a lot of people don't understand what that actually means. People think that introverts just don't like people and extroverts love people, and sometimes that overlaps, sometimes that couldn't be further from the truth. And plenty of introverts desire to be around people, but they simply are drained by them, by being around people so much. They need internal thinking and processing. That's just the way they go about it. So that is the difference. So let's take introvert and extrovert, which is the first letter in the 4-letter code. Extrovert being people who derive their energy from other people. They think externally. And it's not just that they're gaining magical energy from people. It's that they are actively communicating with people and processing information and ideas and things about each other socially through external communication and connecting. They may not think so much on their own. If they're by themselves for too long, they may literally not think about much, or they may go into a downward spiral and think negative thoughts because they don't have anything new in their brains to propel them forward. And that's kind of the same thing on the opposite end for introverts. Introverts think internally, so we need space and time. And I say we because I'm definitely an introvert. We need time and space to think about our approaches to life, to think about the information we've gathered, in the past day or so, or think about our past, or think about new ideas, projects, abstract thinking, depending on how you think. Internal thinkers, we need that space, because when we're out there in the world, we're not thinking. We're not. If you're in a crowd of people, you're kind of too busy dealing with the extrasensoriness going on. There's just too much input, and it's overloading you, and you're not quickly processing it. Another way to think about it is how quick they process information. Extroverts tend to think, some extroverts tend to think faster and absorb information faster and be able to, spit that back out faster. Whereas introverts need time to think, to coalesce, and respond. It's like those people who will respond to text messages quickly versus those who need time to think about what they're going to say. That's an easy way to think about it. And then there are these other letter types that I'll break down as well. I thought I was going to fit it all into one segment, but this is a lot. So so that kind of breaks down introvert versus extrovert. And next we'll kind of talk about cognitive functions a little bit, because that's pretty important about how you can dive further into this and how it will really separate your perception of the Myers-Briggs system. It will really go into granular detail, and you'll learn about how you think versus feeling like it's just astrology. So I really encourage you, despite my trying to explain things to you, that you go deeper into figuring out what your type is. If you're interested in multiple types or Myers-Briggs in itself, to just dive in and do different research. If you find out that, I typically find so far that if you're the thinking type, which is the third letter, T versus F, if you're the thinking type, you'll more likely enjoy doing deep dives and research, looking into reading articles and books, or absorbing podcasts or other kinds of media. Whereas I think the feeling types will be more people focused, so they'd rather someone sit and talk to them about it, or watch a YouTube video where someone is telling them about it. Some people will prefer to read versus listen or watch. So feeling types will listen or watch, and thinking types will read or listen or watch. Less likely to just watch. And there are some different websites. So if you go to YouTube, there's Personality Hacker, which does some really interesting deep dives into cognitive functions, and Personality Junkies, which is a website, also dives into cognitive functions and has some really great articles that break down into more philosophical discussions about each type and the specifics of type pairings, because you can look at NT types all kind of fit into a bucket, TP types fit into a bucket, SJ, FJ, different combinations kind of fit into different buckets, and can kind of help you understand different ways of thinking. For me, it's helping me understand other people's thinking, because for me as an INTP, I just don't inherently I'm not very good at recognizing people's emotions and really caring about that, because INTPs are described as the warm robot. So we're very factual, very informational, and we can be caring, and we have feelings, and we like to express those feelings, but they're all coming internally, and we're not very good at we're not the best types to console people. We can give you information or tactics, or even refer you to someone who would be more loving for you, but us INTPs are just not good at that. So the other types, learn about who you are and dive into the cognitive functions, because that'll help you to determine what your priorities are. And for the most part, when you learn how to lean into your strengths, use the auxiliary functions for letting yourself, be something else a little bit of the time. I'll describe that a little bit more when I dive into INTP, because I think I'm going too deep. But right now, the other types, the other three letters basically have somewhat specific yet loose, it's hard to explain, definitions of how people think. So the N versus S, which is the second letter, N is more so describes abstract thinking, where S defines more thinking based on facts or previous events, things that you're more sure of, where the N types, intuitive, are more likely to entertain new ideas and play in the abstract. The T versus F for the third letter describes your type of thinking. So internal thinking versus external feeling. FI or FE, basically. And, TI versus TE, sorry. So I have internal thinking, INTP, and then, Molly, for example, she's an ENFP, so she's a feeling type, and often will determine how they think about something based on how they feel about something first. And for the INTP types, that sounds completely irrational, but sometimes that's just a way of approaching a problem or a situation, and usually that involves, internal research. And then the P type versus J, I'll break that down and then go into INTP, because this segment's about to end. So the last function I didn't get to was the T or the P or J rather, perceiving versus judging. And actually, I didn't break down what the names for the other ones were. So N versus S was observing versus intuition. T versus F is thinking versus feeling. And now the last letter is P, perceiving versus judging. Perceiving is a little bit more about sort of feeling out the situation and being open to new ideas and open to progressive ideas, I guess you could say. Whereas judging is a type that is a little bit more set in stone. They're a little bit quicker to make decisions. They like planning. They definitely enjoy being more structured, and can, depending on your auxiliary types, your other types, can really thrive in structured environments and really appreciate hierarchy. Whereas P types, perceiving, they're a little messier. Essentially, they kind of bounce from idea to idea, and it doesn't mean they're unproductive, because I think a J type that's listening to this will be like, ugh, those P types, they'll never get anything done. That's not necessarily true. I think those two types together are really helpful, because the P type will help the J type kind of break out of their shell a little bit and not be so strict with their structures, and the J type will give the P type a little bit more order. It's true that I think what's true to think about for all of these types is that they are a strong definition about how you think, but it's also important that since all of these types kind of have auxiliary functions, they have mirror functions, you kind of think about how to improve your weaknesses. Like for me, my strength is dominant thinking. So I'm a very good thinker. I can work through problems very well, and I'm definitely a problem solver. I'm definitely someone that can really break down a concept and find all of the connections. INTPs are kind of interesting in that way. And I'll go into INTPs specifically next to really talk about what I've learned about myself. And my weakness is the feeling, the external feeling that I have, which is the P type. And I'm not good at expressing emotion. I'm not good at absorbing emotion. I'm definitely good at feeling emotion. I have it. I'm not a robot. I am still a person. I do feel emotions. But expressing that can be difficult, and when it does come out, it can kind of come out in a flood of emotion in a way that's kind of childlike and incoherent sometimes, and sometimes will almost turn off the rational process in our brain. It almost takes over. And really, the growth for an INTP, or really any type, is kind of figuring out what your dominant strength is and what your weakness is, and finding ways to bridge those gaps, finding ways to be a dominant thinker, for me, and still be a person that considers people's thoughts and emotions. And that's why I dove into the Myers-Briggs personality stuff, because I wanted to learn more about people, because if I can better identify the type of person that I'm speaking to, I can adjust how I speak to them based on that information. I'm not working off of intuition there. I'm working off of data. And that data of knowing someone's type, or getting a sense of what their type might be, which is part of my intuition, actually. That's the marriage of those two things, the intuition and the dominant thinking, allows me to make adjustments to how I speak to that person, or maybe realize that this person is not someone I'm going to be able to have a rational discussion with, or someone that I might be able to have a rational discussion with, or to learn more about which situations I need to get out of versus which ones I'm good staying into, and how that affects my mental health in a way, and how I approach the world. So I'm going to dive into INTP and my learning of myself. So I know I bounced around quite a bit, but I wanted to do that in a way to sort of just introduce you to the terminology, the concepts, and just give you a sense of the depth that you can go into if you do your own research for your Myers-Briggs personality type or others. I've been really diving into mine, and I've learned that I'm an INTP, and that means that I'm characterized as the warmest robot in a lot of ways. A lot of sites refer to INTPs as the logician, which is a fantastic name. I love that so much. Because we're very logical thinkers. We approach the world based on facts and data. Examples are that, Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, and Isaac Newton are said to be INTPs. People who take a lot of time to think, and they think complex, but they also think abstractly, and they have a certain sense of intuition. So they can kind of feel and perceive reality and people, and also think internally about that, and they kind of don't waste their time on the little nuances of people. Like we don't care for pleasantries too much, where we would make very terrible party hosts. We definitely prefer to get to the meat of a discussion. We prefer to talk about ideas versus people. Most of the time when someone gets into a discussion about people, they start talking about like their family and who's doing what and things like that. I check out. I have no interest, zero interest whatsoever. I can fake it for a little bit, but I start to feel my brain chemistry change. And because of my susceptibility to triggers and changes in mood because of my cyclothymia, that kind of helps me to be aware of what situations to get out of, and which to kind of stay in and work through. So this is just another way for me to understand my brain and how I approach the world. I think for the most part, because I've been in graphic design and marketing, I've felt like I've needed to be more of an extrovert than I am. And that's simply not true, and it's not something you can change. You can't really change your letter. I think you can change it over time, maybe, but I think the core tenets of who you are essentially stay the same. I've been an introvert all of my life, and I've learned over time to be better at people, to be better at peopling, and to be more, to be better at providing emotional comfort, And for me, that's simply staying quiet. I'm not really good at going like, oh, I'm just not. I don't see the logic in that, so it drives me nuts. But some weaknesses of INTPs are that we will try to provide logic into emotional situations, which is not helpful to a lot of people because they need to feel things. They think differently. Sometimes that can be very frustrating to feeling types because they just need to feel through the situation. That's just the way they go through the world. And for me, helping me understand that helps me, to be more patient with people and to not expect everyone to be like me. And if anything, that makes me feel like I have a superpower. That makes me feel like my dominant thinking makes me unique. INTPs make up only 3% of the population, the fourth rarest type, and it's a big deal. The biggest example of an INTP, fictionally, two big examples are, I forget the character's name, but the lead character on Bones, who is often referred to as Bones on the Fox TV show, and then Neo from The Matrix is an INTP. If you're interested in INTPs, there's a YouTube video about INTPs relating to The Matrix that really breaks down our thinking really well. It breaks down the fact that we feel like we can intuit how the world works, how we see how reality works. We feel like it's malleable and moldable, and that we can really understand people. I think that's quite literally how Albert Einstein came up with the theory of relativity, because relativity is how we think, is how INTPs think, and how I've thought most of my life. So for me, that's really fascinating. So I'm going to close it out from here. So all of the Myers-Briggs stuff is incredibly fascinating. I loved diving into it because for me, it helped me understand myself in my mental health struggle. It helped me understand that I was trying too many times to be something I am not. And my line of work often involves people. It involves working with clients. It involves kind of butt kissing a little bit, and INTPs are not good at that. We don't like to be the boss, and we don't like to have a boss. We have authority issues. We like to work alone, and we just don't like to follow rules for the sake of following them. If a rule doesn't make sense or someone's request doesn't make sense, then we are going to fight tooth and nail against it because it doesn't make any sense to us. We're very rational thinkers, and that is something that I'm very proud of, and I think I need to own that a little bit more. I need to both embrace my thinking side, my intuitive side, which is the passenger in the car, as it were, someone that allows me to explore and gets me out of my shell, because if I dive too deep into my dominant thinking, I'll become a bit of a recluse, and I'll just be inside reading and thinking, because as much as INTP is like probably the most antisocial, one of the most antisocial types, we still need people in some sense or another. But I think through this, I've learned that I would rather cultivate my relationships with people to be positive ones. And if I'm just working with clients and associating people with negativity, with difficult people, in one shape or another, then that becomes a big problem. That becomes something that I don't want to deal with people. So I want to embrace people in a positive way, and for that, our Myers-Briggs is allowing me to learn more about myself and how to improve that. So that's it. That's everything. That's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. It's helping me to realize that by leaning more into my strengths, that I'm not broken. And I think a lot of mental health issues come from someone feeling like they're broken. Especially introverts have a hard time in a very extroverted world where there are expectations placed on us. And if we can't meet those naturally, then it's a problem. And the truth is, we are naturally these types. Introverts are not going to change into extroverts and vice versa. That's just not how that works. I think you can be better, at finding tools to navigate both situations. But I think ultimately the way your brain thinks is the way your brain thinks. And the closer that we come to understanding that and not trying so hard to change how we are and then feel guilty about it is going to lead to a lot of improved mental health situations, I feel. In situations that aren't severe. Severe ones are harder to work with, but and I'm not a mental health professional, by the way, but I'm just talking from my experience. A lot of the times repression leads to difficulty, repression of our ideas, of our personality, of things that we want to say to people, of how we want to be. And I think we need to lean into being ourselves more, but sometimes that involves taking a deep dive because we might not even know about who we are. So I think diving into Myers-Briggs is a good idea if you're a little bit stuck in the world, if you're trying to figure out a little bit more about your mental health struggles, if you don't fit in, if you're an introvert, you definitely should. Even some extroverts who don't understand introverts should dive into this a little bit and learn how to navigate, those situations, because it's kind of rude to go to an introvert and say, "Why aren't you talking?" That's not cool. That's just as rude as an introvert going to an extrovert and saying, "Why are you talking so much?" Those two lines sound very different based culturally, but they're the same. So I think both sides need to learn about themselves, learn about yourselves individually, and each other, and so we can learn how to take better care of each other. I love you guys. Hi, my name is Christian.com. I'll talk to you later. Bonus segment, and something I just thought about as I was uploading that last one, is with introverts and extroverts, and it depends on the type of introvert and extrovert you are, really, but for me specifically, for INTPs, in terms of our work and what we enjoy and what brings us the most satisfaction, INTPs appreciate mastery and more intrinsic thinking and more intrinsic notoriety, meaning we prefer people, we care about our reputation, but we more so care about the value of that reputation and the value of those connections. So we care about fewer individuals caring very strongly about our work and what we do. We want to be seen as someone that leaves a mark on the world, like anyone else, like plenty of people do. We want to do it for our thinking. We want people to respect us. We want to be appreciated. And I think that's very different from an extroverted world that finds success in fame, in things, in external stuff, which kind of falls more in line with the S type versus the N type for that second function. So kind of mastery of oneself and ability. So I kind of took that as a cue also for me to stop worrying about so much, because I honestly don't care about money and fame. I'm not interested in that. I think I was interested in that when I was younger, and I had a lot of big dreams of that stuff, but I found that those dreams were very much the opposite of my natural self, and it didn't make sense for me to have those kinds of dreams. But I think what I wanted really was some sense of respect and notoriety for what it is that I do, which is being a good thinker. And that is what's diving me into doing more of this podcast, diving into doing some videos about mental health and mindset, because I feel like I have a lot to offer in this space, in a space that is oversaturated with rah-rah and hustle and grind and, all of that stuff. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And motivation is great, but it doesn't work the same for everybody. And especially in the mental health space, I think we need to consider more of the nuances. And that's what I can provide. I can provide the nuances. I can provide filling the cracks. I'm good at that, and I think that's my strength, and that's what I want to do. So I can do that through voice. I can do that through video. Maybe not video as much, but I can do that through voice quite a bit. And I will likely be doing that through the books that I intend to write and articles and stuff like that. I want to share how we can better navigate the world for people that are like me, who have had difficulty in their lives, feeling like they want to be something, but don't feel like they can be something. And I think we still can, but I think it's about reframing and thinking about what notoriety and respect really means to us, and looking at the fact that if we're internal thinkers, then internal satisfaction is most important as well. And for external thinkers, external satisfaction is where it's at. So even if INTPs, for example, or internal thinkers were able to attain a sense of notoriety, I don't think that would be satisfying. I think that search for something will always be there. And that search for something will always be there in some sense or another. There is no end goal to thinking or feeling. There's no final emotion until you die. There's no state. I think a lot of INTPs will continue searching emotionally for something that is like, okay, I fully understand life now. That's not where it's going to be. You're going to continue to pursue. You're going to continue to learn and continue to share. And that is where your strengths lie. And I think that is where a lot of internal thinkers, introverts, have strengths. And that is who I'll mostly be speaking to from now on, is introvert types and people who are more like me and who can relate to me and my story. And just kind of helping people to embrace who they are and go from there. Because, again, we can't give into what the world expects of us. We have to define the world for ourselves.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to C Note FM. I hope it makes you want to take over the world or go, flip a car or something positive like that. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and give it a good rating and all that good stuff, and share with your friends, and let me know how you felt about it. Go to howmynameIsChristian.com to find out more about me and what I do, and I'll talk to you and see you next time.